Okay, hello, Ricardo Tranjan. So I'm here with Ricardo today. I'm at his book launch here at the BTL book launch on Bathurst at the Social Innovation site. And we have Ricardo here who's going to talk a little bit about his book. And I'm going to just ask you a few questions, Ricardo. Does that work for you,
Of
Ricardo?
course,
Yeah.
yes.
So maybe just hold up your book for a second. Wow, that looks amazing, that cover. Yeah.
It is a beautiful cover.
It's a beautiful cover, yeah.
And I had nothing to do with this. It's not to my credit, but it's a beautiful cover.
But you had a lot to do with what's between the covers.
Yes,
yeah.
more
and,
so.
And so my first question is very simply, why did you write the book? I see that it's titled The Tenant Class. Mm-hmm. Is that related to the subject?
Yes, I wrote the book because presently we talk a lot about housing issues in Canada, but the way we talk about it, using this notion that there is a housing crisis, I think it's inaccurate and it mischaracterizes the problem. Mm-hmm. It makes us believe that everyone is equally impacted by the so-called housing crisis.
And they're not equally impacted.
No, there's a lot of people who are actually benefiting tremendously and accumulating wealth through the way the market is set up presently. Mm-hmm. And there is a smaller group of people who are actually being negatively impacted persistently and systematically. So I think it's inaccurate the way we describe it, and it's also it's not simply inaccurate in a kind of an academic perspective. Mm-hmm. It's inaccurate, but also has a very concrete negative impact on people's lives. It hurts people.
And so in that smaller group you're talking about that's impacted negatively, you're talking about tenants, right?
I'm talking about the tenant class.
Okay, all right, okay. And in the book, do you describe, are there features of the tenant class that you talk about?
Yes, I spent the first chapter talking a little bit about the tenant class, who they are, where they live, a little bit of some myths about tenants, how they are facing stigma and how they're facing exploitation, not only in the rental market, but often in the labor market as well, which sometimes they refer to like the double dipping. So capital exploits them in the labor market in that they bosses pay very low wages, and then workers take their wages at home, and guess what? There's a second big chunk of it that is taken away through rents. So yes, I talk a little bit about that. Then I talk about the landlord class, and then I have a couple chapters that is about the struggles, historical struggles, because unfortunately we don't talk much about that history. But tenant organizing, tenant fighting has been part of Canadian history. There's amazing and very inspiring examples going back to before Confederation, and then I also talk about some of the current good work happening today.
Okay. So I'm also interested to know, is there a favorite part of this book that you really would like more, or was there a part that you liked writing more in this book, or was there a part of the book that was very difficult to write? Yeah, you can answer any of those questions.
Yes, there is one chapter when I get to describing the struggles, and that first chapter there is more historical. I like it. I like it because there is kind of a nerd in me that really likes just to document and bring to life the history of previous social resistance movements. I'm always very thankful to the people who fought before us and who kept kind of our political imaginary alive and who kind of brought us here. There's that history, right? And it's very important to document that. So that chapter was really dear to me. Also because
so that nerd in you is your nerd training in economics, history, planning. What is it in? Tell us.
I have a doctorate in political economy, and I did a lot of historical work in that. My first and more academic book does a lot of that. There's a lot of telling the history of social movement in Brazil, the country where I'm born. And so that's that. And that chapter does a little bit that too. So that chapter, the beginning of the chapter, I bring in some of my previous work and my experience growing up in Brazil and kind of like mix with work that I do here in Canada. So in a few pages, I just tell like 40 years of my
Oh,
life,
wow.
right? My previous work.
So you bring a little of your personal history into the telling of the...
and then kind of mix it up, and we kind of like brings all different things that I worked and that I lived together. So that chapter is a bit special for me.
Oh,
yeah.
amazing. Okay, so last question. So if I were to buy this book, is there one thing that you're hoping that I get out of it more than anything else? And maybe is there even an action or some type of plan or some type of activity that you're hoping comes out of your book?
Yes, I think what I'm hoping people are gonna go away with is an understanding that there is no housing crisis per se. What we have is a market working exactly the way it is supposed to work, and that market is allowing some people to reap a lot of benefits at the detriment of the other. And then connected to that is the fact that there's no technical solution to this. There is no win-win policy solution to this. It's a political fight, it's a political struggle, and then everyone are gonna have to take a side on this. You will have to pick, if you wanna be part of the movement and if you wanna be helpful, you have to pick a side. There's no win-win-win situation. You choose to be with the tenants, or you choose to be with the landlord class and all the political folks that have their backs.
Amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you so much for writing this book, The Tenant Class. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.